Welcome to Rewitched, a charmed 1998 rewatch podcast. Join us on our journey as we recap, examine, and critique the series episode by episode from the beginning.
We'll be keeping our podcast spoiler free, so we welcome fans, new and old, to join us in watching and reflecting on one of our favorite shows. Currently, we're on season 1,
I'm your host, Jess Sabenko.
and I'm your host, Mia Savenko.
Now let's get into this week's episode.
This week, we're discussing Season 1, Episode 18, When Bad Warlocks Turn Good. It originally aired on April 28th, 1999, and had 5.10 million viewers. A pretty big drop from the previous episode.
So we are at a church and it's nighttime. There's this guy named Brendan, and he is talking to the priest, who's an older man, about his fears and saying how he feels like he's fooling God. The priest tells him that he knows his heart and that he's not a fraud. And Brendan says, "You don't know my family, Father. Generations of evil, evil that's in my blood." And that's when the priest says, "The blood of the sacrament washes it clean." Then we realize that someone else is there and says, "Hello, Brendan." And there are two guys there. And Brendan is like, "How did you guys find me?" And they say they'll wait outside so they can have a family reunion, and they leave.
Okay, so here's a little intro. We don't really have much background information yet.
Yep, I don't know who any of these characters. All I know is that that guy is the guy who plays Tony DiNozzo on NCIS.
Oh my god, that's why he looked so familiar. I was like, where did I see you from? Like, I know you from somewhere. Oh my god. Wow, thank you. Because I used to watch NCIS when I was little, and I totally forgot. Anyways, so then we move to outside, and there's a Quake van parked outside the church by a sign that says "Feed the Needy." And Prue is helping Phoebe and Piper load trays into a van. And Prue says, "Next time Quake does a food pantry, why don't you call some guys?" And Piper says, "I'll just go through my handy guy Rolodex." And Phoebe says, which I believe now stops at J for Josh, or is it B for boyfriend? And Phoebe says that he calls her all the time, but she won't go out with him. And Piper starts saying how she's too busy and her instincts are telling her to lay low. And then this group of nuns starts walking by, and Piper says, now they've got the right idea. Stress-free, no need to worry about guys, no wardrobe. Phoebe says, no wardrobe? Okay, no wardrobe? Okay, now you're scaring me. And they all laugh. And Piper finds a pen, and they find out that it's Brendan's pen, whoever that is. And Phoebe says that it's the cute guy who signed for the food. And Piper tells Phoebe to go bring it to him. And when she takes the pen, Phoebe has a premonition of Brendan in the church getting attacked by warlocks. And so they see that and they split up to go find him and save him.
Yeah.
In case you guys don't remember, Josh is from, I don't remember what the name of the episode was. There's a Woogie in the house. Yeah. He was the professor's, like, what's that called? Prodigy or something?
Assistant.
So, no, what's that called? Where they like teaching them, you're gonna be my prodigy, right?
Oh, no, because a prodigy just means that you're really good at something. It's like their
well, whatever, you know what I mean.
Apprentice.
Prodigy. Apprentice, my bad. And I guess he's been calling her, and for some reason Piper doesn't want to be in a relationship right now or is fearful, so I guess we hadn't heard about that before, so we'll see where that's coming from maybe later in the episode if it comes up.
Yeah. But overall, up to the premonition, I think this scene is kind of playful, funny, very sisterly.
Yeah, I agree.
The joke about like needing guys to like carry the trays was funny to me. I liked that.
Yeah. And also, I wonder about warlocks being in the church. Because I would have thought that, like, they wouldn't have been able to walk inside, like that superstition thing. And I wonder if that's something that they stick to throughout the whole
Yeah,
show.
because I also wondered, because if we remember, I want to say it was in episode 2 or 3, Piper goes into the church and that's how she like finally convinces herself that she's good and not evil.
Yeah. So we kind of had the impression that they did include that in the show, that, the whole evil beings going into the church would be an issue. So I guess we'll just see in the future, like, how they continue that, if that's a consistent thing they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then we are back inside the church and Brendan is praying and the two guys approach him and we find out that they are his brothers. And one of them says, "You're praying to the wrong deity. I mean, after all, you can't deny who you are." And one of them, who we find out is named Greg, he morphs into his warlock form, which is just like his facial features all become like
Wrinkly.
wrinkly and like he's supposed to be like, I guess, like quote unquote deformed in some way. And I guess that's how they depict evil, which is kind of offensive, but I won't spend too long talking about that. It's just like, if people have conditions or whatever, they're not evil. So I don't necessarily like that that's how the show depicts evil. Like when they make demons just kind of look like monsters, I get it. But when you make it look like someone who just has like some type of deformity, I don't love that
Yeah,
concept. Yeah. But
I agree with you.
anyway, yeah. But anyway, from there, Greg says, "We've come a long way to find you. We're not leaving until you join us." And then the other brother says that they don't want to hurt him. But then Greg just like hits him across the room. And that was what Phoebe saw in her vision. And Greg says, "Did you really think that the church could save you?" And he's like strangling him. And that's when Prue walks in and she uses her power to throw Greg across the room. And then she's calling for Piper and Phoebe. The warlocks run out. And Prue asks Brendan if he's all right. And he's like, "Yeah, thanks." And he just like leaves too. And then Piper and Phoebe approach and ask what happened. And Prue's like, "I don't know, but I'm going to go find out." And then she starts to leave.
Yeah, so here we're starting to understand a little more who these three guys are, get the idea that Brendan is a part of this warlock brotherhood and he's trying to get away from it and become a priest, like, or, work with the father to protect himself from becoming that again. And him reacting very calmly to the warlocks and to Prue's powers, like he wasn't even surprised or something. You could tell that Prue was pretty confused by that.
Yeah, definitely. And, we'll see that come back up soon. But yeah, I mean, I think you covered everything I would have said about the scene too. So I don't really have anything to add there.
Yeah, me neither. Still kind of intro. I feel like a lot of this episode is pretty much just. This episode's not as deep as the last one, mostly just monster of the week.
Yeah, yeah. I think we'll get into some deep stuff later. I think I have some things to say about some scenes, but I think the overall storyline, I agree with you.
Yeah. Okay, so then we get into the theme, and then we are in some apartment room, and the brothers are in there, and Greg is talking about how they should have kept a better eye on Brendan, while the other one is looking at a lizard and its reflexes in the tank, and Greg goes to hurt the lizard, and the other one stops him with his power, and he says, "Maybe we should just let Brendan go. We don't really need him. It's not like we don't already have our powers." And Greg says, "Without him, we can't complete our triangle. It's the whole prophecy of the Roe Coven. He must accept his heritage. He must be initiated as a warlock." And then they start talking about how they need to get him to kill an innocent before he gets ordained into the church, because that would make him safe. And then Greg says that they would have to kill him if he does that.
So I like the dynamic they're setting up between the brothers. I think it's similar to the one we saw in Secrets and Guys between the two kidnappers, is where one's very clearly evil and one's kind of more benevolent. Like he's a bad guy, but he doesn't have the same like I want to kill
Intent.
people, I
Yeah.
want to do bad things type of energy.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of pick up on that right away, like right from the start, that the other brother is just not as intense as the other, or as Greg.
Yeah. I'm also interested in this idea that like I mean obviously since we watched the entire episode we know what they're talking about, but the idea that like Brendan needs to be initiated as a warlock, like he isn't already one, but they're already one.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. Like initiated as one, what could he mean by that?
Yeah. So then we are at the manor and we're in that like sunroom the next morning and the phone is ringing. Prue and Piper are sitting together at the table and Phoebe goes and answers the phone. It's Josh calling and Piper says that she'll call him back and Phoebe's like, "Yeah, she's right here. Hold on a sec." And Piper takes the phone and is obviously like annoyed at Phoebe. And she's like, "Oh, my horoscope said that? Really? Well, that's a shame because I have to work Friday night, Saturday night too." And Phoebe's talking to Prue and asks what the issue is, if they like each other. And Prue's kind of like, "It's none of our business." And this really reminds me of like earlier in the show, how like Piper and Phoebe were like inserting themselves in Prue's relationship with Andy, and Prue was annoyed about it. So I'm glad that Prue's at least consistent. Like she doesn't want to get involved in Piper's relationship the same way she didn't want Piper involved in her relationship.
True, but she wasn't the same way when it came to Clay.
True, true. But I think that's because she saw like
She saw the red flags.
yeah. And I think here she also like in both cases I feel like she was being protective because she's like, "Well, Piper doesn't want to get involved in this guy, so like let's not push it." And
Mm-hmm.
then she's like, "Well, you're getting involved with a guy who I think is a bad guy, so I'm going to do what I have to do to stop it."
Yeah, fair. That's fair.
So then Piper gets off of the phone and she comes and sits down and they change the subject to Brendan, and Prue says that she couldn't find him, but she's hoping the priest will be able to help her. And then Piper says, "Well, you better hope Brendan doesn't tell anybody about your powers, or else we've got bigger problems than just warlocks." And Prue says that she doesn't think he will. She said he didn't seem surprised and that like she saw something in his eyes. And then she's like, "Oh, well, I have to get going, whatever." The phone rings again and Phoebe starts to get up and Piper's like, "Don't you dare answer that. Sit down."
A lot of this is just cute. I feel like they have a lot of cute sister moments in this episode that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I definitely see like as the season has gone on, like they really developed these relationship between these sisters really well. Like I see so much more of their friendship and their comfortableness with each other. Not that they didn't have it in the beginning. I mean, Prue and Phoebe certainly didn't, but like we see even more of them like teasing each other and kind of like getting too in each other's business and stuff. Like they seem like a real family and it's really works for me.
Yeah, the connection is definitely building between them. You can see like from the very start versus now, it's already so much better and so much more united, you know. You can see how
Yeah.
much this stuff really did bring them together.
Mhm.
So then we go to the church, and Prue walks in and approaches the priest, Father Austin, and she tells him that she's Piper's sister, and she asks him about Brendan and says that she saw two men trying to hurt him and she's concerned about him. And Father Austin says that he always said they'd come. It's just something I know Brendan's been wrestling with for his whole life. And she asks where she might be able to find him, and he asks her why. And she says that she thinks he's in trouble and she might be able to help. He's kind of like confused about it and asks how, but she's like, "I can't really answer that, Father. I just need you to trust me." And then that's where that scene ends.
Yeah, so I like this like when we see Prue talking to people that she has to convince of something, like there's this very like gentle energy that she gives off. I think we saw the same thing when she was talking to Allison in The Wedding from Hell and she like had to like be like, "I can't tell you exactly what I'm going to do, but like I can tell you I'm here to help." Like there's this presence that she has in those scenes that's really effective and like I would trust Prue if she came to me
Yeah,
like that.
it makes people like want to trust you.
yeah, like there's just this ease in the way she speaks, and like I would trust her too. Like I think it's really, really well portrayed there.
Me too. I think she does a really good job at that. And I mean, it must have something to do with like she's purposely trying to give off that energy. And it's just kind of like a natural thing to her because she is a good witch. And this really is what she's meant to do. Like, I do believe that people can see good in people. Like, you can kind of tell people's intentions based on their body language and the way that they act.
Mm-hmm. So then after that, we are at Quake, and Phoebe is sitting at the bar and Piper's working. And Phoebe's like, so the lunch rush is almost over, then you're closed till dinner, right? And Piper's like, yeah, why? She's like, just curious. And then she changes the subject. She's like, have you heard from Prue? And Piper says she hasn't yet. Phoebe's staring at Piper and says that she's worried about her because she's ignoring a guy she likes and she's overworking herself. And she like talked about becoming a nun. And Piper says that everything is fine. And that's when Josh appears behind them and asks for a glass of the Clara Jensen and says, 93 if you've got it. And he is so gross when he asks her out. He's like, want to get all hot and sweaty with me? I'm literally throwing up. And,
He was like,
but
I'm just
like,
going to cut to the chase.
yeah,
Want to get all hot and sweaty with me?
I was like, ew, disgusting. If someone ever said that to me, I would never go out with them in a million years. But then he's like, no, like, do you want to go to the gym? Like, blah, blah, blah. And she says she'll be right back. And Phoebe follows after her. And Piper's like, I'm going to kill you. And Phoebe says that, like, what's the big deal? Like, you'll get a steam, you'll relax, you'll work out. It's not anything crazy. And she's like, I'll even stay at the restaurant while you're gone and cover for you. And, at first, Piper's like, no, I can't do that. But then she agrees to get Phoebe to shut up. And that's when Josh kind of mouths, like, thank you to her from across the restaurant. And she mouths back, you're welcome. And that's the end of that scene.
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of took it the comedic way that he was intending it, when he kind of, at least he laughed after and he was like, no, I'm just kidding. Like, I mean, like, go to the gym.
Yeah, but I don't
But it
like
was
when
still a
guys
gross
make
approach.
sexual jokes before you've even gone on a first date with them. Like that's just so unattractive to me.
Yeah, it's definitely
Like
it's
it
not
would be one thing if they were like already dating and he said something like that, right? Like if they've been out a couple times, whatever, it would be funny. But like they haven't even gone out.
yeah, it's not, but I think also I don't know, I kind of see it working with like their history, like the meanness but the niceness, like the tension that they had between each other in that episode. Like, I don't know, for me it kind of like worked as a joke that he would say to her and it would work because that was kind of the vibes they were giving to each other the whole time, was to
Yeah.
just kind of be, but then again we also saw that like he can just be a douchebag and it's like the confidence in it is like, okay, you're just being too cocky,
Yeah. Yeah.
bittersweet. And I feel like there was something else, but I totally forgot. But yeah, that's basically it. I mean, we I don't know. We've definitely seen worse from this show.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen much worse guys than Josh.
Yeah, definitely not not the grossest guy we've seen in this show.
Not by far. But also the audacity that Phoebe has to just like set this whole thing up behind Piper's back.
I know. And also Josh, like as soon as we had that phone call, if I was him and like and the person on the other end was like, nope, I'm working. No, too bad, I'm working. Nope, I'm going to be there all day, all night. I would have been like, okay, like fuck this. Like
Well,
obviously
as
he does not want to be
displayed
with
by
me.
like those men who will just pop up in your DMs and have conversations with themselves, like men don't know how to take a hint.
That's true. It's a good point. They really don't. It's just so weird because I see it and I'm like, because even when it happens in real life, I'm like, dude, I would be able to pick up the signs that like this person is just not interested. Like,
Right? Like after the third time someone tells me they don't want to hang out with me, I'm going to assume that this person never wants to hang out with me.
I know. Like, we are not friends, obviously.
Yeah. Like I ask you and you say no, I might be like, okay, they're actually busy. It happens a second time, I'm starting to get a little suspicious. It happens that
Yeah.
third time, I'm like, they hate me, so I won't
Yeah.
ask again.
Be like, fuck that. What's the point?
Literally.
Yeah, so I don't know how he didn't pick up on that. And Phoebe butting in, like, that's a bit, like, I get butting into your siblings, pressing them for information, but to go around and set something up completely is like, all right, relax.
Yeah.
You ain't how to do all that. All right, so then we go to this horse farm and we see Brendan helping this little girl get off of a horse, and he's being really sweet to her and nice. And then she sees a spider on her pants and starts like doing the fakest scream ever. Ah! She was like, get it off. I was like, okay. You weren't born to be a star, sweetie. And anyways, so he takes it off her pants, and she's like, no, don't be scared. All life is precious to God, and tells her not to be afraid, and tries to gets her to hold it. And then Prue is watching this, and he looks over and sees Prue there, and then he goes and tells the little girl to go free it so that he can go over to Prue. And he goes over there, and she tells him that Father Austin told her where he was, and he tells her her secret is safe with him. And she's like, but why? And tells him that most people aren't just attacked by warlocks. And he doesn't want to talk about that, and so he gets on a horse and tries to like ride away, but Prue goes over to this other guy's horse and just kind of steals it away and is like, I'm borrowing this. And the guy's like, yo, okay, no problem. And just like gets up and leaves and starts following him. And then they ride out to the woods or like some meadow, and she catches up to him and then passes him. And they're very obviously like kind of joking around, flirting. And Brendan's like, who are you anyway? And Prue's like, oh, well, that's not fair. I asked you first. And he says he doesn't know. And there's kind of this tension between them and a little more flirting. And she tells him that he's in danger. And he says, I know. And she tells him that she can help, but he doesn't think that she can. And she asked who the warlocks were, and he's like, it doesn't matter, and after tomorrow I'll be safe from them forever after I become a priest. And Prue's still very confused, like obviously this guy has a history with this but just won't say it, so she's intrigued.
Yeah. I kind of liked their dynamic here. Like I was feeling it. Like I was shipping them. I was like, ooh, like cute.
I guess kind of, but to me it was like a little too quick and a little too like, I don't know. I guess they do a lot of the like one episode relationship type things. They do push very quickly,
Yeah.
like all these guys that they happen to do it always just seems like love at first sight, and it's like, well, that's just so dramatic, it's not realistic, which I don't, it's cute, but it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Mia, I don't think you've ever fallen in love with someone in 2 days, but I've been there. So
Yeah, you've been there, but how about 15 minutes? Like,
yeah, it takes a little
they
longer than 15 minutes
they
usually.
just met, and like even that episode with, what was it, Dead Man Dating, with Piper and I forget his name, but
My husband, Mark.
Mark, of course. That was brought on really quick, and I'm sure it won't be the last time that it happens in this show, but it is cute.
I also it's just so unhinged that he wants to get away from the conversation, so he just gets on a fucking horse and leaves.
Yeah,
mood. I need to just have a horse with me. That way someone starts talking to me about something I don't want to hear, and I'm just like, dip.
Just hop on a horse and leave. And that still didn't get away from her. She had no
Also,
problem
like,
going and stealing this other guy's horse.
now I want to know like Prue's history with horses. Like, how does she know how to ride a horse? I don't know how to ride a horse.
Right? We didn't even get an explanation to that. I would have fallen off. I would have just
Same.
been like, forget it. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Good luck with all that.
Guess you can save yourself, sir.
Yeah, seriously. Figure it out on your own. I'm over it. You got God on your side.
So then we're at the gym, but it's actually like a rock climbing wall, and I think it's outdoors. And Piper is climbing and cursing Phoebe. She's like, oh, Phoebe, like, you know. And then Josh comes back down because he clearly already made it to the top to where Piper's at and asks how she's doing. And she's like, oh, like, I'm great, whatever. And he's like, oh, like, do you want me to climb the rest of the way up with you? And she's like, no, like, I'll meet you at the bottom. And then she like keeps going up as he like descends down on the rope. And then she slips and he like catches her in his arms. And Piper's like, talk about falling for a guy. And she gets out of her arms and freezes him. And she's kind of like, why did I say that? And then she pulls out her cell phone and calls Quake. Then we kind of cut back and forth on the phone call. So Phoebe answers, and we see that the sink in front of her is overflowing in the kitchen, and she's like covered in water. She asks Piper how it's going, and Piper says it's going bad because they shared the look. And Phoebe's kind of like, what are you talking about? And Piper's like, the look that precedes the kiss. You look at each other at the same time, you smile at each other at the same time. And Phoebe says, that's great. And she's like covering water that's coming out with like a pot. And then Piper says she didn't want this to happen. And then she's like, wait, am I hearing water running? And Phoebe's like, no, but if I was the water shut off valve, like where would I be? And Piper sighs and turns back to Josh just as he's like unfreezing. And he's like, where did your phone come from? She's like, oh, Phoebe just called and there's an emergency at the restaurant. So she kisses him on the cheek, like thanks him for the date and leaves. And he's just like looking at her, mad confused.
Yeah, it's what did she expect to happen? He was frozen for the entire phone call, and then she's just gonna say Phoebe just called, but he had no like he didn't know there was a gap in that time period, you know? Like Phoebe didn't have a chance to call.
Yeah, it was just like telepathy. And like honestly, after that happened, I would have been like, wow, she like made up a phone call. She definitely doesn't want to be on a date with me.
I know. I'd have been like, I'm over this, forget it.
Piper's a catch, but I don't know if I'd be chasing that hard, you know?
No, after just what this is like the first date it took you that long to go out with her. Like Josh is not an unattractive dude. Like find somebody else.
Yeah.
Aside from that, I didn't get too much from this scene.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought, the Phoebe stuff was funny. I thought,
Yeah.
I just, I'm not feeling Piper and Josh. So maybe if I were, I would have enjoyed this scene a little more between them and like the look and everything. But like, I'm still Team Leo. So
Yeah, I can't. I'm just forever Team Leo. Anytime another love interest comes into Piper's life, it's like, no, I'm all set. Thanks. But, anyways, after this, we go back to the church and we see Father Austin just dead on the floor, basically dead. And there's a warlock standing over him, and Prue runs in and makes eye contact with him, and the warlock shifts back into Brendan. So we see that he has a warlock form too. And he's like, Prue, and he starts running away, and Prue runs over to Father Austin's body to see if he's alive, and nuns come in, and she tells them to call 911 as she chases after Brendan. And then to catch up, she like uses her power to throw him to the ground. And he says that he found Father Austin like that and then became a warlock. And he said, when I saw what they did to him, I was crazed. The rage turned me into a warlock. He says he needs to call, he's like, you don't have to trust me, but please just let me call the paramedics. Don't let him die. And she's like, well, they've already been called. Do you actually expect me to believe that you're a good warlock? And he says, no, there's no such thing. And then they hear sirens coming, and he says that he can explain it all to her if she lets him, and he needs to help her stop his brothers, which are the other warlocks.
yeah. So
Now
I'm
we know that
interested.
Brendan's, Ken is a warlock, so I don't know what the whole initiation thing is about still.
Yeah, maybe it's kind of like getting him to turn actually evil. Like maybe there's something he has to do to become like a full-time warlock, and this is kind of like their first step to getting him to like transition, I guess.
Yeah, like evil forever kind of thing.
Also, another thing in this scene that stands out to me is this idea that like there's no such thing as a good warlock. I'm really interested in learning more about Brendan's history, which I know we will in the next few scenes, and kind of how he's able to have this goodness if there's no such thing as a good warlock.
Yeah, I'm interested to see that too. Hadn't really put that together.
So then we're outside the church and we see the paramedics are taking Father Austin away and he's on a stretcher. And Andy and Darryl are, of course, there. And Darryl has just interviewed a nun, or I'm sorry, Andy had just interviewed a nun who said that Brendan Rowe was running away from the scene. He said that he lives in the rectory behind the church, and we could see like very clearly by like the way Andy's acting and the way his face looks that he's very upset. And Darryl kind of asks him what's wrong, and he tells Darryl that Father Austin is his priest. He's the one who gave him his first communion. And that's when the ambulance drives away, and Darryl's like, "Well, do you want to like follow and go make sure he's okay?" And Andy said, "No, like I want to catch the scum that did this to him." And that's how we end that scene.
Ooh, Andy's getting fired up. So we know he's going to have some involvement. Can't wait to see how that goes.
Yeah, and I think like I don't know, is this personal connection going to bring out Andy's angry side again?
I know, usually it tends to.
Yep.
So we'll see. Hopefully not, because we've just forgiven him.
I know, literally, I just moved past Andy like abusing his authority, and now he's mad again, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Hoping for the best.
Hoping for the best.
Okay, then we go back to Quake, and Piper gives a check to the plumber and walks over to Phoebe and tells her that she should have called her. And Phoebe's like, "But you had a good time, right?" And she's like, "Unfortunately." Phoebe's like, "Do you confuse yourself when you do that?" And Piper's like, "Well, it seems like every guy I've dated lately has been either a warlock, a ghost, or otherwise unavailable, like Leo. I was just trying to save myself some grief with Josh. I'm tired of falling for the wrong guy, human or supernatural." And Phoebe understands and says that she wouldn't have pushed so hard if she knew how she was feeling. And Piper's like, "No, I'm grateful. Like, I'm not mad at you."
So I really like this moment. I like this ability that Piper has to really like explain what she's feeling and how she's there, because I feel like sometimes our reasoning makes so much sense in our own head, and when you don't actually tell people why you're doing something, like they
It
don't
doesn't
get
make
it.
sense to them, yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, to get personal for a moment, like with like this relationship that I've kind of been like sort of on and offy with, when we were like very much off, like people would keep being like, "Well, why don't you date other people? Why don't you do this?" And like I didn't know how to explain that, like I'm just not in the right place to do that, but I was just like, "Ew, no." And people were like, "Well, why ew?" And it's like until you actually explain to people like how you're feeling and how like, because that was all coming from a place like I wasn't ready to put myself back out there. I wasn't ready to like I needed to go through my feelings before I could put myself out there again. And I feel like that's how Piper's feeling right now. Like she has this fear that's very valid, and like she should be able to take the time to deal with that before she tries to like force herself into something new when she's not ready.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she's got logical reasoning behind it, and whether or not she does, if she's not ready for something like that, no one should be pushing that on her. But I mean, at the same time, I think Phoebe just took it as like more concern for her. Like she thought that this is what Piper really wanted, and she just was not admitting it. But really, Piper just needs this time.
Yeah. And the thing is, as soon as like Piper explains it to her, Phoebe's like, "Well, like I get it now. And like if I had known
Yeah.
that, I wouldn't have done it," which I think is a moment of understanding, because it kind of reminds me of this idea that like it's not communication that's important, it's comprehension. Like I can say anything I want, but if the person I'm telling it to doesn't understand where I'm coming from, the words I'm saying are never going to matter.
Yeah, they're just useless.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. It was definitely a cute scene. And it also, it's good that she was ready to communicate her feelings too. Like maybe the reason she hadn't said anything was that she just didn't know how to express how she felt. But
Yeah.
it was nice that she was able to finally say it.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like once you can really express it, like people are more likely to understand than when you're just like, no, 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 no.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. So then from there, we are outside the church and we see Prue and Brendan are walking together. And he's telling her that Greg and Paul are his half brothers. His mother was human, so he's not a full warlock like they are. And Prue is kind of like, oh, well, we have something in common, like my father's human. And, he's like, yeah, but I come from evil. And he starts telling her about the history of the Roe Coven and says that his line is meant to result in three brothers destined to become the most powerful force for evil the world has ever known. He says he went into hiding to break the chain and make amends for everything that his family has done. He says that embracing God by becoming a priest is the only way he can lose his power and his warlock nature forever. She tells him that he can fight the evil inside of him and he can fight his brothers. And he says that he can't because his brothers are going to keep hurting people he cares about until he gives in. And then he says they'll even hurt you, which I agree with you. This is moving too fast. Why does he care about her already? But
Yeah.
then, Prue's kind of like, I can take care of myself. It's you I'm worried about. And he says that he has to kill them before they can trick him into killing someone. And, he says, you'll have to follow me to their place. And then you and your sisters are going to have to kill me. And she looks really sad about this, but she doesn't say anything back.
Yeah, so see, it's kind of moments like this where it's like, all right, that's a little too intense to come across as a real love interest or relationship type thing.
Yeah, because I feel like the first scene was working for me because it was kind of like, oh, it's like this cute moment of connection. But now it's like you've known each other for like one day and like you care so much about her that like she's someone your brothers would hurt to hurt you.
Yeah. You know what? That's what I was thinking when I saw it too. I was like, give me a break. Like, come
Yeah, I
on.
get you. I mean, I
but
guess
but it is
plot's
cute.
sake, it is cute.
Yeah.
And like I like the connections they're making here. It's kind of like in those moments when we were talking about in Dead Man Dating how like Mark and Piper were finding those little things that connected them. I feel like we're seeing the same thing here. Like it's this idea of like obviously the fact that they're both from these like long lines with this destiny to be part of this group of three, but also the fact that, they have this human part of them. Like, the charmed ones are witches, but they're still people. Like he's from a warlock family, but he's still a person.
Yeah. Yeah, they have a lot to relate on, which definitely it plays a part in making people more interested in others or more intrigued by them is when you find someone that you can relate to like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was generally another cute scene between them. Obviously, we can see their interest in each other, and we learn more about the Roe Coven and what their brother's plan is and how he can be a good warlock.
Mm-hmm.
So after this, we go back to that apartment building, and the brother, whose name is Paul, tells Greg that everything is ready. And Greg says he's coming. This is amazing. Just at his approach, my power quickens. It's as if I'm reaching out for him for completion. Do you feel it too? And then the door opens, and Brendan walks in, and Greg offers him his hand. And Brendan's like, I'm here to kill you, Greg. He's like, well, I'm glad. Anything less, I'd be disappointed. And he goes over and gets an athame and throws it to the wall next to Brendan, saying that he needs this. And Paul tells him to take it, so he does. And then him and Greg starts fighting each other, and he cuts him, and he's kind of egging him on, trying to get him more angry and turn into a warlock. And he throws him into the next room, and we see this woman in there, blindfolded and tied to the table, with candles around her lit up and like a little symbol on her chest. And they're telling him that he needs to kill her. And then in the hall, Piper and Phoebe come up, and they didn't have time to go home and get the Book of Shadows. Prue wants them to vanquish Brendan's brothers before he turns and go save him, but they're kind of like not convinced by this. And then back inside, Brendan is holding the athame above the woman's chest, and Greg says, "One clean thrust and you are both at peace." Then the door opens and Prue tells him no and unties the girl's hands. And the brothers leave and hit Brendan. And then Prue runs to him, and Piper tells the girl she's safe. Prue tells her to leave the blindfold on so that they don't see her, and they'll call for help. And Phoebe says, "Prue, he's a warlock." And she's like, "I know," and walks out with him. So, intense little fighting scene. Brendan almost killed this bitch.
Yeah, I know. I was like, this poor girl. Like, so much is going on with her, and it's just like, whatever. Gotta save Brendan.
Literally, like, this bitch just
He's
got
hot,
kidnapped and
so
taken. She's hearing about, like, feeling a knife on her chest and hearing about these people who all want to kill her. Like, that's so scary. And they
and
have
Prue's
zero
like,
concern for
listen,
her.
like, Brendan is my new boo, so we're gonna have to
Forgive and forget.
exactly.
Beautiful. Touching, really.
But yeah, no, overall, I think this is a good scene. I think it's well put together. I like the way the brothers are kind of like trying to get that anger out of him. I think it's really effective. And I like that he's like giving into it, right? Because I feel
Yeah.
like they're really good at playing him here. I think that, the fact that he didn't do it, I wonder, and it's going to come up later, like, had Prue gotten there a few minutes later, like, would he have killed the girl? And I
Yeah.
think yes.
I think he totally would have. And
Like,
not
I
that he
don't think
wanted to,
he's
but he wasn't
no, I just
powerful
don't
enough
think
to
he has
stop
the
it.
strength to overcome it on his own. I think Prue is the what gives him the strength, which is something
Yeah.
I'll talk about more later.
Right.
So then we come back and we're still at the apartment building and some time has passed. It's now a crime scene. Darryl's there and he says, to another guy who's like coming in with a camera from the CSU, he's kind of like the victim shaken up. He wants to keep the scene small. And he's actually being very sweet here. And I'll say that like I'm starting to really like Darryl. I've been saying it over the episodes because I remember we talked like earlier in the season about how like I wasn't sure how I felt about him yet. I think seeing him interact with witnesses and kind of like people he's interrogating, he's harsh, but seeing how like gentle he is with someone who is like a victim makes me like him more.
Yeah, me too. It shows that he does have that. Like, it all comes from a good place, is, kind of
Exactly. And I get like when you're someone who's investigating like homicides and violent crimes like this, how you might like get angry and be more aggressive with like the people you think committed those crimes. So like I
Yeah.
get where some of his nature comes from, though some of his like more sexist comments I'm still not a fan of.
Yeah. Especially when it's personal, like, that's gonna affect you more, having to deal with these things.
So then, we see Andy is sitting with the victim at the couch and, someone brings over water for her. She starts telling him what happened and says that she was putting away groceries in her car when they got her. He asks if Brendan was one of the men and shows her a picture. She says no, but they called one of the other ones that. She said that, he was going to kill her. She's pretty sure that they drugged her because, like, she was there and then suddenly she was in the apartment. She said that one of the women who came made him stop. And she says, Prue, I think her name was Prue. And that's like when Andy just like nods and asks this female cop to like stay behind with the victim. And he goes over to Darryl and tells Darryl that the two others took her and brought her here for Brendan to kill her. And he starts to leave and Darryl asks where he's going. And he says, I'm going to get to the bottom of this once and for all. And he leaves.
Uh-oh. Things are heating up with Andy again.
Mm-hmm. Is he about to confront them
Arrest
about
her?
magic? Or is he
Yeah,
going
I
to
know.
arrest Prue? Is he going to yell at her?
What's
he gonna
happening now? I
do?
can't wait to find out. And at least this girl is getting some attention from, like, Andy. The poor girl didn't get any from the girls who, like, saved her and everything.
Yeah, they were just like, LOL, leave her, call the cops, bye.
Yeah, leave the blindfold on. She'll figure it out. Like, Jesus Christ.
I mean, I guess they untied her. She could unblindfold herself.
Yeah, that's true. But, I mean,
She just has
saving
to,
the
like,
guy afterwards.
pull herself up by her bootstraps and unblindfold herself.
Exactly. No problem. She can handle it. She made it. She
Oh
made it
gosh.
this far. All right. So now we move to the manor, and Prue is with Brendan in her room, bringing him blankets. And she tells him that he can sleep there, and she'll sleep with Piper. And he says, "Why?" And she's like, "Because Phoebe kicks." And he's like, "No, I mean, why are you doing this? Why are you being so kind to me after what I almost did?" She's like, "Yeah, but you didn't, and that's what's important. You didn't succumb to your brother's will." He says he could feel the evil taking over, and if they hadn't come when they did, and Prue's like, "You still would have stopped yourself." He's like, "How can you be so sure of me when I'm not even sure of myself?" She's like, "Because you're a good person, Brendan. I've seen it. Your good side is much stronger than your evil side. You just have to keep fighting it until your ordination in the morning, and then you'll be home free." And she smiles at him, and they keep looking at each other, smiling, and obviously very flirty moment.
They're sharing
And
the look, as Piper
they're
called it.
sharing they're sharing the look that precedes the kiss. And Brendan says, "How many more temptations must I endure?" Like, "Okay, sir, relax." And they kiss, and she says she's gonna go, and good night, and she leaves.
So kissing a priest. Okay.
Yeah, I know, intense. And then back downstairs, the sisters are standing by the counter, and Piper's like, he was about to drive a knife into that woman's heart, and Phoebe's agreeing with her, and Prue's kind of defending him like he didn't do it though, and Phoebe's like, "Yeah, that's because we stopped him." Prue says that Phoebe's premonition makes him the innocent that they need to protect, and Phoebe says maybe we were directed to him so that we could save the real innocent, the woman. And Piper asks how Prue knows Brendan won't try to kill them because she brought him to the house. And she says he's not just a warlock, he's a human too. And Piper sighs. And Prue reminds her of when she was the Wendigo and Phoebe when she was possessed by the shadow. She's like, if anyone could relate to what Brendan is going through, I would think that it would be you two. And Piper asks what if she's wrong and he joins his brothers. And Phoebe says then they become the evil charmed ones and it's too late to stop them. Prue says she knows and she can't explain it, but her instincts are telling her to help him and that she wants them to, like, she's like, you don't have to believe in him, but please believe in me. And they're like, okay, but they need to figure out a way to stop his brothers. And then the doorbell rings and Prue goes to get it. And what do you know? It's our boy Andy. He's yelling and tells her he'll forget he can place her at the scene of a crime if she tells him where Brendan is. And Phoebe and Piper come over and they're like, and Andy's like, "What's the matter? You need a little more time to work on your story." And Phoebe kind of yells at him, like, "Andy?" And he's like, "I'm sorry, but all bets are off on this one. A priest, my priest, was viciously attacked at his own church. This is a guy who dedicated his entire life to doing only good. Then a young mother was kidnapped and almost sacrificed at an altar. Now I can place Brendan Rowe at both scenes of the crime and the female victim hearing your name at the last one. And believe it or not, I don't care why you were there. All I care about is who tried to kill Father Austin." And Prue's like, "I wish I could help you." And then he turns to Piper and asks if she has any idea where he is. And Piper's like, "We're not hiding any criminals here, Andy, if that's what you're asking." And he says, "Fine, Father Austin is in intensive care. If he dies, that's first-degree murder. And if I found out you were somehow involved, I won't be able to look the other way this time, Prue." And then this intense music plays and he leaves. And Phoebe says, "I've never seen him like that before." And Prue's like, "Well, can you blame him?" And Piper says, "I hope you're right about Brendan, Prue."
Okay.
It's a very long scene.
Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning. So if we go back to the little part in the bedroom, for the most part, I think that was cute. I like the way they're looking at each other. It does, because they're not making these grand love declarations. They're just kind of like having these like eye
Give
each
them
other,
moment.
first kiss stuff, like it works for me.
Yeah,
The I care about you, so they'll use you to get to me. That I was like, that's too much. But this one, I liked this. I was on board. I was like, this is cute.
me too.
Then when we go downstairs, I liked this sister scene. I like the way that Prue's kind of like trust me and that they do agree to, but they still need to come up with this plan. Like I think they're being sisterly, but still being like what they need to be to get the job done. So it works for
Yeah,
me as well.
they definitely still have those concerns, but it's nice that they put that trust in Prue, and you can see, like, again, with the sisterly connection that they have, like the trust that they have in each other, they're willing to do that for her, and I think that's really sweet, while still, figuring out what they need to do to get his brothers.
Yeah, and I think like, each of the sisters kind of learning to trust their own instincts and each other's instincts if something we've been seeing happen throughout the season and like I think we'll continue to see happen throughout the course of the show. So I like that idea being like brought out here.
Me too.
And then, the Andys of it all. So what do you think of this? What do you think of his reaction?
Honestly, pleasantly surprised. I don't
It
know
felt
about
fair
you.
to me. It felt deserved.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't unreasonable. He wasn't abusing his power or doing anything. You could see that the anger, it wasn't directed at her. It was coming from a place of frustration and curiosity, confusion. Like he just is really trying to get to the bottom of this and not like I feel like any other time, or at least that one time where he turned it against her, he was just so focused on figuring out what her secret was and why she was acting the way she is.
Yeah. And like in that scene, he was already angry at her for something else and was taking it out on her because of that.
Yeah.
Here, he's not mad at her, right? He wants her help.
Hmm.
And, I kind of asked if in the scene where he kind of had that paper about black magic, like, does he think Prue is evil? I don't think he does. And I think this scene proves that he doesn't think she's evil.
Yeah. I think he also is kind of trusting his own instincts when it comes to Prue. And even when he's saying, like, it would be first degree murder, and if you're involved, like, in any way, I can't protect you this time, as opposed to being like, I'll bust your ass. He's like, there's nothing I can do this time if things go really bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he's not trying to, like, he's not threatening her, he's not trying to hurt her, he's just trying to say, like, hey, I don't think that you're doing something evil, but I need to know what's going on, with Brendan, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I also like the way that her sisters are defending her. I mean, we've seen Phoebe defend her from Andy kind of overstepping before, but I like the way that even Piper, because like I feel like this is exactly how I am as a sibling. Like, I will tell you, I'll be like, you're fucking wrong. But like, if someone else tries to like step in, I'll be like, back up.
Yeah.
Like, Mia is doing no wrong. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I'll tell you,
exactly.
but I won't let someone else like yell at you for something.
Right, exactly. Me too. Which I think so. I think they do a lot of little sisterly things that just, I feel like we see it a lot in the show where it's like, it is realistic and it makes the show feel more real and the emotions and the connection between them all.
Exactly, because like it's a show about magic, but at the heart of it, it's a show about family.
Yeah.
And that's why like I love watching it and watching it again.
Yeah. You can watch it over and over again because it's not just about something stupid like that. Like there's so much more to it that I enjoy, and it's overall just one of the best.
Yeah, definitely. So then we have a really quick little scene after this that kind of cuts back and forth between the church where Greg and Paul are in Brendan's room in the rectory and Prue's room where Brendan is. So Greg and Paul are chanting something in Latin, and then we see like Brendan is in the bed and he's shirtless because even though he's a priest, he's got to be sexy, and
Literally.
he's like tossing and turning, and he wakes up and he's like panting and he's all sweaty. He gets up out of the bed and he sees like a spider and a web and he like smashes it and it's like really like harsh, and then he like looks like almost right at the camera and is like kind of shocked at himself, but like there's this kind of like darkness to his look, so we know something's about to happen. So then we cut to the church and it's the next morning and Greg and Paul are arguing with each other. Paul's like, saying how Brendan isn't going to come and the spell didn't work. And Greg says that they still have time. Then Paul's like, he can't be taken. His mother's blood is too strong in him. And Greg's like, well, then we have to kill him. And Paul's like, I won't let that happen. And, Greg says we won't have a choice. And that's when like Greg attacks Paul. And then the door opens and it's Brendan. Greg's like, the spell brought you here, but the rest you're going to have to do on your own, little brother. And he says, I understand. I feel only my power reaching out to yours and yours to complete our triangle. And Paul says, all it takes is the life of a mortal. And then Greg, because he's just got to be big bad guy, is like, I'm afraid we're going to need more. You need proof that you have truly turned. To complete the row coven, you need to sacrifice a witch. And so he like hands him the athame and he's like, Prue. And then like, they're like all three of them like holding the knife together. It's very romantic. And like for some reason it just seemed like intimate to me again. And I was like, why are they always making moments between siblings intimate?
Honestly. I mean, it was kind of cool, but also a little like, all right, relax, guys.
Yeah, it was like I don't know. It's just like it's just like three guys like holding like a rod. It's like, come on. It's a dick.
I know. It's weird because you think like you see things like this that they put so much in the show and you're like, maybe the creators just must not have siblings, but then they're able to depict the sisters so beautifully, like so I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, this is mostly just developing Brendan kind of like losing touch with the good side and getting more and more overtaken by the dark.
Yeah, exactly. And we see more of what we were saying in the beginning, how you can tell that Paul is the one who's not as driven as Greg is. Mm-hmm. And even here, he's like refusing to kill Brendan and refusing to like hurt him. And he was like, before, like, let's just let him go, like, dude, let him do his own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. After this, we go back to the manor, and Prue and Piper are in Prue's room. The bed is empty, and Piper asks her where he went, obviously suspicious, and Prue's like, he probably just went to go get ready, and she said she's going to go find him. And then Phoebe walks in to tell them that what the book says about the Row Coven. And she says, ever since the 10th century, each generation has grown stronger. Nobody can find a spell or a weapon that can stop them. And Prue says, let's just hope that the power of 3 can beat them. And Phoebe says, unless it's already 3 against 3. So Piper and Phoebe are very, very concerned at this point, have zero faith, and Prue is still clinging on to Brendan because they just have this unspoken eternal love,
Yeah, I agree with you. And, I think it's interesting kind of this more backstory we're getting here. The exposition is working for me in this episode similarly to how it was in the last. So I'm good with that scene.
Yeah. The trust that she has in Brendan is insane.
I know.
This.
Like, I consider myself someone who, like, trusts people, like, very quickly. But even this is a lot for me.
I know, right? I'd be like, I don't know, guys. Like, maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. I might have fucked up here.
So then from there, we are at the church and the sisters are walking down the hall. Phoebe and Piper ask if Prue wants them to go in with her, and she says she needs a minute alone with him. So she enters this like office, and Brendan is standing behind the door and closes it, and we see that athame is like stuck into the door, and he says, "Hello, Prue," in like a weird way, and she's like, "Hi, is everything all right?" And then he like pulls the knife out and is like, "Yeah, sure. You worried about me?" And he walks towards her and he's like holding the knife, and she's like, "A little, especially since you left this morning without a word." And there's just like this chit chat back and forth with him, and then she realizes that his brothers got to him. He says that he's gonna kill her, and she throws him across the room with her power, and he like breaks the closet as he gets thrown into it. That's when Phoebe and Piper come running in, and she says it's okay. and he shifts into like his warlock form. She's like, this is it. You kill me or I kill you. Everything that you've worked for, all the good that you've done, still can do, all for nothing, all lost. I don't believe it. I don't believe that this is the real you. And he lifts up the knife and she says, you're good. You can't kill me. It's not who you are. It's not why Father Austin believes in you. And like at that word, he like drops his hand and like he roars and like shifts back to himself, and the knife falls to the ground. And he asks if he hurt her, and she says no. And he says, forgive me. And in the background, Phoebe like kind of turns to Piper and is like, I wasn't worried. Were you worried? Piper's like, And they all walk out to the main part of the church together after that. And they're like kind of, sneakily walking out. And Piper says that it's clear. Brendan is now dressed in his like priest attire. And then we see that his brothers are actually hiding right behind the wall. And Greg comes out and he's like, you betrayed us, little brother. I'm very disappointed. And Piper tries to freeze them. Phoebe throws a knife. Prue tries to move them, but they like have this power that blocks the sisters' powers. And then Greg picks up the knife from the ground, and Paul steps in front of him and asks him to give Brendan a chance. He's like, it's not too late, Brendan. You can still join us. And then Greg says, you're either with us or against us. And Brendan says that, then I'm against you. And that's when Greg throws the knife at Brendan. But holy shit, Paul jumps in front of him and gets stabbed. And then he rips the knife out of his chest and throws it into Greg's chest. And then red smoke like comes out of their mouths and they both die, and then they like kind of fade out in this like shitty special effect. And then Prue walks over to Brendan and is like, I'm sorry. And he says, I'm not. And then the clock starts chiming. And, he says, after all these years, after everything I've given up to get here, a sacrifice never seemed greater than it does right now. And they kiss again. And she says, tell me about it. And then he leaves. We cut to the ordination where the sisters are sitting like in the pew together. And he's getting, his little ceremony done. Prue's crying. And then Phoebe takes her hand and says, if you're ever going to lose a guy, it might as well be to the big guy. And like Prue kind of laughs, but she's still crying.
So that was an intense, unexpected ending.
Yeah. So I guess before I get into my thoughts on the interactions with the brothers, I'll just talk about that scene in the little like bedroom area, the office room thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like how it's kind of like her words and like how she stays so calm through this. Like Prue has this ability to like maintain her composure that like I could not imagine ever having in a moment like that. And I feel like it takes such strength of character, because there are people who are like that, who can deal with these really intense situations and just stay calm and like do that to keep the other person calm. And it's just so like amazing.
Inspiring, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I wish.
Like I feel like I would be so freaking out and just making things worse, but she's just able to like keep herself together and be like, no, like I've got this, I can help him.
Yeah, I like because the confidence she has in herself, the way she trusts herself enough to know that like she can do it, is like, it's honestly a really like inspiring thing. And it's like, you are just such a strong individual, like it's so nice to see.
Yeah. And then if we get into the section with the brothers, the fact that Paul, like, because I feel like we got hints that he cares about Brendan, like how deep it goes that he's like, no, you're not going to kill our brother, and sacrifices himself, I think shows that, Brendan said that there's no such thing as a good warlock. I want to raise the question, is Paul a good warlock?
Like, is it possible that he could be? I think so. I think if he had followed in Brendan's footsteps, I feel like the only thing that tied him more to Greg was that he didn't have that human half.
Yeah. So I wonder, like, could he have been saved too?
Maybe he wanted to, but felt like he couldn't. Maybe he really did understand where Brendan was coming from. I mean, in the end, he cared enough to sacrifice his life for his brothers. And
Mhm.
I mean, we didn't even see that with the brother and sister, the one that
Oh,
in the
and
warehouse.
which Prue is it anyway?
Yeah, which proves it anyway. Exactly.
Mhm.
Like, you don't
Yeah.
see that with the warlocks usually.
Yeah, and it brings me to that idea, because I think we've raised it before, like, can evil beings love? And
Hmm.
I think that I don't know if the show will keep this consistent. Maybe it will give us back that idea that they can't, but I think that Paul proves that he loves Brendan here.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I feel that they can, and they've shown that it is possible. So, I mean, I guess we'll see. Hopefully we get to see more of stuff like that in the future.
Mhm. Yeah. I guess just, talking about the little, if you're ever going to lose a guy, it might as well be to the big guy. Like, that was cute. I like
Yeah,
that.
that was a really nice line. I thought that was really cute. Okay, well then we move on to the last scene of the episode, and the sisters are at Quake per usual. And Prue is at the bar and orders her usual drink, and then Andy arrives and sits with her, and she's like, "Are you still mad at me?" And he's like, "Listen, Prue, I'm sorry about how I acted earlier." An apology from Andy? And he
I
wasn't even
know.
out of line this time. Insane. And she says, "Andy, please, you don't have to apologize. I know how close you are to Father Austin. I've known you a long time, remember?" And he says, "Yeah, I remember." And they both smile at each other. And he tells her Father Austin will be okay. And he said it was Brendan Rowe's brothers who attacked him and not Brendan. And then he says, "I have a feeling you're not." Oh, she says, "I have a feeling you're not going to be able to find them anywhere." And he says, "Now I wonder how you might know that." Then he says he has to get back to work, and they look at each other, they give a little look, and he leaves. And she takes her drink to a table with Phoebe and Piper. Prue says, "I wonder how he knew I would be here." And Phoebe's like, "Are you kidding? We're always at Quake after we vanquish warlocks, either here or at home." Piper sees Josh at the door, and Phoebe's like, "Oh my god, that guy cannot take a hint. Piper, this is my fault. I'm the one that pushed you on him, so I'll handle this, okay?" Piper's like, "It's okay, Phoebe. I called him. I've decided it's time to try and work through my fears and trust my instincts." And he walks over, and she gets up, and then they get their own table and sit down. Phoebe says, I didn't do such a bad thing after all." And Prue says, "I'd say helping her to get over always falling for the wrong guy is a pretty good thing. Now maybe you can help me with it." And then she makes a joke about losing the good ones to priesthood, and Prue says, "At least he's not a warlock, and Piper's not a nun." And then they clink their glasses. Cute little ending scene for them.
Yeah. So I will say I am back aboard the ship that is known as Prue and Andy after that scene.
Oh, 100%. And Prue, like, she got two guys in this episode, like, giving her the look. Are you kidding me?
Literally, I was like, ooh, okay, Prue, get it.
She's on it. She is playing the field.
Yes, ma'am. And I am not hating.
Yeah, I'm for it. Piper working or starting to see Josh again, though. I wonder, like, if that's gonna last. It
I
doesn't
give
seem
it
like.
one episode.
Yeah, me too. I don't see them as a long lasting like relationship. I feel like we would have developed his character a little more if they were going to keep him around for a long time.
Yeah.
It's
And
usually how they do it.
mhm. Yeah. And the like little final scene with Prue and Phoebe is very cute. So I liked that.
Yeah. Overall, it was a good episode.
Yeah, no,
A lot
overall
of
I
cute
really liked
sisterly
this one.
moments.
I wasn't thinking of this one as like one I was super excited to watch or talk about,
Me
but
neither.
I actually really enjoyed like the discussion. I enjoyed watching this episode. Like it's a good one.
Me too. It was. I mean, like we've said it before. I mean, it's so weird the episodes that I've seen that I never really think twice about, and then we analyze them, and I'm like, wow, I've never really looked at this episode like that before.
Yeah.
Like overall, it is really a cute episode.
Mm-hmm. And I
in a
think
good
it does
way.
hit some of those like character moments that I think will take us into what's coming up in the last few episodes of the season.
Yeah. Ooh, we're
I
getting there.
can,
Almost
I
to the end of
know.
season 1.
It's crazy. We have 4 episodes left to talk about for season 1 now.
Wow, that is crazy. Going by quick, I feel like.
I know.
All right. Well, do you have anything else to add? Any final thoughts?
Um, just that I'm really excited for next week's episode. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. If you want to reach out to us or follow us on social media, we're on Instagram and TikTok at rewitched_pod. You can also send us an email to rewitched.pod@gmail.com. And join us back next time for season 1, episode 19, Out of Sight.